And let's go to our next caller tonight. Welcome to our open forum program. Please go ahead with your call.
Yes, I was wondering if you could refresh my memory. In May 21st, 2011, when that came and went, and people started to mock arrow camping,
Right.
He pushed the date up to October 21st. You know the reason for that?
Well, he actually, this wasn't well known by the world and by the church, apparently. But for years, since Mr. Camping wrote the book Time Has an End, he laid out these two dates, May 21, 2011, October 21, 2011, which was exactly 5 months later. And at the time of the writing of that book, came out in about the year 2003 or 2004, Mr. Camping wasn't sure when Judgment Day would begin. And you see, October 21 was significant because it was the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, and he, as well as many of us, were under the assumption that God would spiritually fulfill the Feast of Tabernacles by destroying the world. And there's biblical reasons for that, but it caused this divide in understanding for a while, until someone noticed, and it wasn't Mr. Camping, but whoever it was informed Mr. Camping that May 21, 2011, which was the 23rd exact year of the Great Tribulation. The Great Tribulation, or the judgment on the church, began, the end of the church age occurred, and the judgment began, the Great Tribulation began May 21, 1988. May 21, 2011 was the 23rd year. And for many years, Mr. Camping was declaring that was the 23-year Great Tribulation period. And so he had that date of May 21 over here. But then again, he was figuring God will fulfill the Feast of Tabernacles October 21, 5 months later. Well, someone noticed that May 21, 2011 had the underlying Hebrew calendar date of the 17th day of the second month in the Hebrew calendar. So that immediately, jumps out, because the flood occurred or began on the 17th day of the second month of Noah. You can read that in Genesis 7. After 7 days, God warned Noah, yet 7 days and I'll bring the flood. 7 days later was the 17th day of the second month of Noah's calendar. And we had already learned the significance of 1 day is 1,000 years in 2 Peter 3, applied to the statement to Noah by God, yet 7 days, 7,000 years from the flood year, 4990, takes you directly to the year 2011. Again, added up, 4990 plus 2011 minus 1 equals 7,000 exactly. And so once it was realized that May 21, 2011, the exact 23rd year of the Great Tribulation, had that underlying Hebrew calendar date in a year 7,000 years from the flood to the very year, then it became obvious that was God putting his finger on that day. That is the day the door shuts, because that's what took place on the ark. God shut the door. He shut Noah, his family, and the animals into the ark. And so that had to be Judgment Day, because if the door shuts, it's the end of salvation, and God would only do that to start the judgment process. But again, keeping the eye on that October 21 date, Mr. Camping began to teach that there was a 5-month period, and Revelation 9 speaks of 5 months of torment, I think at least a couple of times. Genesis 7 refers to 150 days wherein the floodwaters were rising, and the 150 days broken down by 30-day months is 5 30-day months. And so putting these two together, he concluded that there would be a literal 5-month period of judgment. Now, this was spoken of for at least a few years prior to May 21, 2011, that Judgment Day was to be a prolonged period of time, 5 literal months from May 21 until October 21. And what happened after May 21, 2011 seemingly came and went without occurrence, that is, we didn't see anything with our eyes. So it was thought, because we were looking for a literal earthquake, a physical earthquake, that and that would begin that awful 5-month period of just hell on earth. Mr. Camping also taught May 21 would be the rapture and the day of resurrection, where the graves would open, and that was incorrect. We've since corrected that. We've also corrected the idea of a literal 5 months. The 5 months figure is to be understood spiritually to represent the entire duration of the prolonged judgment, which is not 5 months, but 22 actual years, 23 inclusive, according to much biblical evidence. Well, anyway, so after May 21, 2011 did not occur as thought, with literal earthquake, literal rapture, the taking up of God's people, then Mr. Camping, it was just a short while, I think just a couple weeks before he had his stroke, but he went back to study, and he began to speak of the end coming on October 21. It was a reasonable conclusion to make, given his earlier understanding that the last day of Tabernacles would end the world, and so it was not an additional timeline. It was actually part of the whole thing that he had been saying for many years. Only now it was rearranged, and at that point, we would have to say, when he began to teach that October 21 would be the end, then he must have realized that the rapture would not come on the first day of judgment, and he was teaching that Judgment Day had come, spiritual judgment, and there was no more salvation, which was why he instructed Family Radio to stop their printing presses, and for the short period of time before his stroke, no more evangelization. He was convinced everyone to be saved was saved. Pretty much, much of what E-Bible Fellowship has continued to teach, that there is no more salvation, there is a spiritual judgment and a prolonged judgment, and also the rapture and resurrection takes place on the very last day of the prolonged judgment, the literal last day of Earth's history. And so we see already that Mr. Camping was going in that direction. But then God, for his own purposes, and one of the purposes was to try and to severely test the idea that people were following a man rather than God. That was often the charge against Family Radio listeners. You're following Harold Camping. Well, God put it to the test, and then after recovering from his stroke to some degree, Mr. Camping put forth some things such as, I remember the statement concerning no man knows the day or hour. Somebody asked him, and he said, well, I guess we can't know the day or hour. And people ran with it. No Bible study, no thorough searching of the scriptures in order to come to that conclusion, as Mr. Camping prior to his stroke always would have done, just simply sort of I don't know the word. I guess it's an inevitable. It must be kind of true that no one can know the day or hour because it did not work out, and that's all some people needed. Oh, Mr. Camping began teaching no man knows the day or hour, and so therefore they began to say it, thus failing God's test. And you know that that is not it is not a just and right thing to do, to take a simple statement from someone in certainly a physically weakened condition. That's definite, and we now know, looking back, it was Mr. Camping was near death, and to take the statement of a man in a physically weakened condition, and a stroke also does impact the mind and the thought processes. It can slow them down, and to take that rather than the 50 years of statements that are on record, and you can Google them still, or go to YouTube and find them, where he goes in depth, in detail, repeatedly answering, can we know, or what is the biblical response to no man knows the day or hour, it is certainly, I think, deceitful. It's deceitful, and people who had all but called Mr. Camping a false prophet were suddenly lifting him up. Oh, Mr. Camping says no man knows the day or hour. It was not earnest of them in any way.